Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Maltcast, my podcast, which is, for the moment, for the last few weeks, been very much focused on the COVID crisis here in North West Hampshire, talking to people from across the constituency about how it's affected them in their lives, what they've been doing during the crisis, and in particular, how the community has been brought together by it and how it's helping each other. And so I'm extremely pleased to be joined today by Sarah, who's a Tadley resident up in the far northeast of the constituency. 220 square miles I cover, from Andover right up to Tadley. Fantastic little town with a great community spirit. So I'm talking to her this afternoon about her efforts with the isolation help group there. Now, Sarah, I gather that the help group that got set up in Tadley is very much a technology-enabled group. Is that right? Take us through how it all started.
Well, we started by creating a Facebook group. I think quite early on we realised that people were going to be stuck in their houses. They might not be able to rely on their usual support networks. And so we set up a Facebook group to try and encourage other people to put notes through their neighbours' doors saying that they could offer to help if they needed help. And from doing that, we got contacted by some people from the local community church who had set up in Salthampstead a sort of software solution for being able to put volunteers and people who needed help together. And from talking to them, we then set up our own webpage, which has a form where you can request help and a form where you can offer help. And both of them plug directly into an online database, which means that we can quickly match volunteers to requests when they come in. And I think we've seen quite a lot of our requests coming from like families so they might have an elderly relative who lives in Tadley, but they live 200 miles away. And actually it's been a way for them to be able to connect with the local group.
Oh, that's fantastic. Very sophisticated, I have to say. Although given some of the expertise that lives in Tadley, no surprise with the atomic weapons establishment next door that they're on top of the software. So what kind of response have you had in terms of numbers of volunteers and then people looking for help? What's the kind of scale of the effort in the town?
So we've had a large number of volunteers. I think similarly to the Good Sam app, we've ended up with more volunteers than we've potentially used so far. So we've had 142 people on our database. Since the Basic Voluntary Action got involved, and we've now created the Tadley Hub, and so we're sort of one arm to the bow of the Tadley Hub, which also has the Tadley District Community Association, which is the main sort of building where the hub is focused. It has the churches together around Tadley, and it has a local group that's become our prescription delivery service. So we've sort of streamlined together as a group and ended up managing so that we're not stepping on each other's toes and we're all sort of working together. So between us over the last week, we've helped over 120 people with prescriptions and shopping and dog walking and those sorts of activities. But we've still got volunteers who at home feeling like they want to do something, which I think is something that's been felt nationally with the Good Sam effort as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I mean, certainly where we live in the constituency, we've had a huge number of people volunteer. And actually, part of the challenge is organising them efficiently. And what we found, I don't know if you found the same thing, is actually it's been easier to have teams of people who specialise in particular things. You know, we've got a prescription team, a shopping team, and they sort of get into a rhythm of operation that makes life a hell of a lot easier. I don't know if you've seen the same kind of thing.
Yeah, so we've got this prescription delivery service team, which has been fantastic, and everything's been streamlined through them. So we can now use our system to direct prescriptions directly to them, and phone calls that come through to the hub as well go through to them. And I think that's been fantastic, because previously if everyone sent someone to the pharmacy, you're not really reducing footfall. So we've been able to streamline things a bit better that way.
Very good. And I don't know whether you managed to overcome one of the difficulties that we had in quite a lot of the groups was around shopping and handling cash for shopping. and the inability to be able to prepay. I think quite a lot of the supermarkets are doing that now. Presumably you're spending quite a lot of time in the Sainsbury's there in Tadley, or certainly the shopping team will be. As I've been queuing outside on a number of occasions, I have to say, to get in there and get to the Argos. But hopefully that problem's been overcome as well, has it?
Yeah, so I think there are various different ways that people can pay, and it has to be sort of tailored to the clients. We the hub as well, it went for a grant, and we've been given some money, which means that sometimes we've been able to buy food for people who haven't been able to access their money. So we had a lady in her 80s who had quite complex needs, couldn't access her money, and didn't do phone banking, couldn't really work out how to do these things. And so we could get her some food, and in the meantime her carers have now worked out how to access her money, and then they can do her shopping for her again. So I think we've had to be quite flexible somehow around money issues. Some people it's fantastic and they can pay for it online, or their children pay for it online, but others we have to think about things a bit more carefully.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been, well, I think a lot of people have been, but you especially been very enterprising to try and figure out how you overcome these problems for a small number of people. Now, obviously, one of the things that Self-Help Groups is doing is the sort of practical side. But as the lockdown has continued, I don't know whether you've seen a trend towards more need for kind of well-being, just general company and calls, so particularly those people, older people, perhaps living alone, who are feeling, suffering from loneliness, frankly, which can be very affecting after quite a lot of weeks. I don't know whether you've been seeing a rise in that activity as well.
Yeah, and it's something we've been thinking about as well around bereavement, because it's such a strange time to be bereaved, whether you're bereaved by COVID or not. The normal practices around funerals have changed, and around the way people gain comfort at those times, people who have been left isolated on their own, who have been bereaved. So we have been looking into that and thinking about ways that we can help those people, and we've got a team that have, again, we're talking about specialist sides of things, so we've been looking at sort of a pathway in a way to look at the people who've been bereaved and helping them in particular. But also I think what we've discovered is that actually these little pockets, so what tends to happen is someone asks us for shopping, we give them a volunteer for shopping, and then we never hear from them again, because them and that volunteer, they build up a relationship, and they've been doing that again and again, week in, week out. And that's happened all over Tadley. And those little relationships and those little connections, I think, are what is keeping people going.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think one of the, if you like, the silver linings coming out of this awful cloud has been the kind of reconnection of people with their neighbours, and the recreation. We'd all become rather atomized sitting in front of the television. But the desire and the need to help people is strong, and it is creating those community connections. I mean, Tadley is a very community spirited place anyway, but it's great that everybody is coming together in that way. Now, where does your group go next, do you think? I mean, obviously there's a sort of shielding effort that will need to go on for some time, notwithstanding the relaxation. But when we get back to sort of normal life and people have to go back to work, presumably you'll see a fall off in the number of volunteers. Are you confident that you can retain the effort?
Yes, we were talking about this today, actually, in our sort of group meeting. I think we might see a fall off of some of the volunteers, but actually we've got quite a hardcore bunch, and then people are already doing it around work. So I think we'll be okay. I think we're quite concerned about moving forward with the sort of the food poverty side of things. So one thing we have also been doing is collecting donations and helping people access food, either from our hub or from the food bank as well. And actually moving forward into the next phase, which is going to be social distancing for a long period of time, the furlough scheme probably isn't going to be around, and people are going to start losing their jobs, and more people are going to fall into poverty. So I think our thoughts focusing moving onwards is actually trying to look after people at those points in their lives as well. I think the hub is here to stay. We don't see it disappearing anytime soon. There's going to be a need ongoing for a long period of time. What it morphs into, I'm not entirely sure, but we will be here, and we will still be trying to help people access food when they need it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're all going to have to be concerned about the recovery and what the sort of impact on the economy and therefore the people who are in it is going to be. I mean, fingers crossed, if we can, start to ease the lockdown over the next few weeks and months, the economy will start to come back to life, and the damage won't be quite as bad as perhaps it might have been longer. But so much of that depends on the numbers, as you know. I mean, we're lucky. We had one of these podcasts with the chief executive of the hospitals, of Hampshire hospitals, who said that they've been able to cope. The numbers haven't been what they've expected, and although there've obviously been quite a lot of cases in the area, and sadly some bereavements, there hasn't been as bad, I think, as everybody was expecting, which is great. But I do think you're right about the fallout for the future. We'll all have to think about that over the next few weeks and months. Certainly from my point of view, with my policing hat on, we're thinking carefully about where we go next on the recovery. Well, that's great. So if there are people out there who don't know about your work, how do they find you? What's the web address, email, phones, the holy trinity of social media? How do they find you?
So we've got a Facebook group called Tadley, Borkhurst and Pamberheath Community Coronavirus Response. And via that, you can find the Tadley Helpers page, which will have our web page address on it. I can send you the link if you want to put it in the information for this. But for those who don't have access to that, the Tadley Hub has a phone number, which is 0118 981 4538. And anybody, if you're vulnerable, if you need help with shopping, with dog walking, with prescriptions, or if you are struggling to feed your family, then give us a call because we might be able to help you out.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put all those details up on the Facebook page and my website at kit.malthouse and kitmalthouse.com, and tweet it out and all the rest of it to make sure that we get the news far and wide. Listen, Sarah, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this afternoon. One of the really heartening things in North West Hampshire was just how quickly so many groups came together, so that we had 100% coverage of the constituency within a matter of days, it seemed to me, which is fantastic. And the fact that you and your fellow Tadleyans all stepped forward with such alacrity, I know will be enormous relief to many people in Tadley, Borkhurst and Pamberheath. It's a fantastic episode. Thank you very much indeed. And hopefully see you in the flesh when this is all over.
Yeah,